With the sun setting on the Trump presidency, I have noticed something happening of which we have been spared over the last 4 years. Somehow I doubt it is a coincidence, but a report in the media recently said that the Palestinian Arabs are unhappy because they are not getting easy access to the COVID-19 vaccines. Just as an aside, I hope that people notice that I always use the term Palestinian Arabs rather than just the more convenient Palestinians that is used everywhere else in the media. The reason for this is twofold. Firstly, it is more accurate, as after World War I, when the term came into use, if you described yourself as a Palestinian, then it was always understood that you were a Jewish citizen of mandatory Palestine, not an Arab of any flavour. The Palestinian flag of the time even had a Magen David on it. Secondly, Arabs describing themselves as Palestinian have an ulterior motive whereby use of this terminology adds legitimacy to the fraudulent narrative that they have been peddling for 50 years. This is their claim to be an ancient indigenous people who have been dispossessed of their land and occupied by the colonising Jews. Okay, so now as it has become clear that President Trump's administration will come to an end on January 20, the whinging, whining, complaining Palestinians are back in business. A Wall Street Journal article reported that whilst Israel is leading the world in vaccinating its citizens against COVID-19, including Arab ones, the people of Gaza and the West Bank, that's their words, I refer to the region as Judea and Samaria, the people of Gaza and the West Bank are moaning now about the prospect of waiting months for the vaccine and the health implications that this implies. So here we go again. We are back on this merry-go-round where the Palestinian Arabs haul out the sympathy card, knowing that Trump is no longer in the picture and that an impending pathetic Biden presidency, or more correctly a third Obama administration, will wring their hands while muttering platitudes about how the world needs to do more for these unfortunate souls. No doubt the Palestinian Authority will cry poor and demand the return of all the foreign aid that the world seems happy to dish out. But if Abbas and his cronies had the money to pay terrorists for murdering Jewish Israelis, then they certainly have the money to pay for the COVID vaccine. After 4 years of blessed relief from all this rubbish, the tide is now returning back in favour of the Palestinian Arabs, and there is no shortage of left-wing Jewish groups ready to help them destroy Israel. J Street, for example, has already encouraged President-elect Biden to reverse many of the Trump administration moves concerning Israel and the Palestinians, including taking the Trump peace plan off the table. Biden has indicated that he will not be reversing some of President Trump's initiatives, such as the US Embassy move, so let's hope he keeps his word on that. But he has also indicated he favours a return to the two-state solution as the optimal formula for peace between Israel and the Palestinian Arabs, ignoring the fact that it has proven to be an abject failure for around 100 years now. The Trump-Netanyahu initiative of reaching out and forging peace with some of the Gulf states has been far more useful for the region, and if it continues, will ultimately be much better for the Palestinian Arabs if they seize the opportunity presented to them. But it's highly unlikely, of course, because their big picture is not to build a functioning society, but to get rid of Israel as a Jewish state. Unfortunately, under a Biden administration, this gravy train looks like doing a U-turn, which will only enhance the corrupt dictatorships of the Palestinian leaders, whilst doing nothing for the average Palestinian Arab. The Palestinian Arabs have developed a nice little business model, so why would they want to work productively when the world is very happy to throw money at them while they do nothing except plot to destroy Israel by diplomatic means? President Trump could see the bleeding obvious and did something about it. President-elect Biden hasn't even looked outside his ivory tower window to know what can be achieved with the right policies. There is a rocky road ahead, and after a 4-year respite, we had better get used to it. This is Alan Freedman for the Australian Jewish Association.